James wakes up, head pops off of his pillow. Man, he's excited. He's 8 years old today. Today is the day that he finally gets to see this Jesus guy speaking at this temple. He's heard all of the stories about Jesus drawing crowds from miles and miles away. And this is the hottest ticket in town. This is the show. So James gets ready, throws on his robe, takes off, sprinting down away from his parents. His parents are like, James, slow down. He's like, no, I gotta see Jesus. So they all get to the temple. His dad opens the door. James walks in. There he is, front of the church. Jesus himself teaching a group of people. James goes and he sits down right at the feet of Jesus and is just listening to this teaching. He looks back. His dad's nodding his head. Just, yeah, that makes sense. And so James nods his head as well. That makes sense. And everything's going great. And then there's screams. There's these loud screams and shrieks happening outside of the temple. The doors of the temple get thrown open, and in march the Pharisees. And James has heard of these Pharisee guys. They're religious rulers who were there that thought they knew all the laws and the rules and the regulations. James thought they were pretty cool. He might have even wanted to be one. When he grows up, the Pharisees are dragging a woman behind them by her hair, just dragging her into the temple, and they throw her down at the feet of Jesus. The woman is crying. She's begging for mercy. Let me go. Please, please let me go. Please throw her down at the feet of Jesus. Jesus looks at them and he says, what's going on? The Pharisees say, this woman was caught cheating on her husband, and the law commands her to die. We were going to throw rocks until she dies. Jesus, what do you have to say about that? James, the boy, freezes. He starts looking around. He's waiting for someone to step in and save this woman. Someone to do the right thing. This is not what Jesus is about. He's looking around and he's horrified because he sees his dad and his mom also holding a rock, ready to do what the law has commanded them to do. Kill this woman in the middle of this church. James looks right at Jesus. He's not holding a rock. He's bent down and he's writing in the sand. Just writing. He stands back up after what feels like an eternity, but it's probably 3 to 5 minutes. Looks right at the Pharisees and he says, if you've never sinned, you can throw the first stone at her. James closes his eyes to avoid seeing the bloodshed that's about to happen. But he doesn't hear screams. He just hears a different noise. As one by one, everyone in the crowd, starting with the oldest, begins to drop the rocks on the ground. He opens his eyes. His parents have dropped the rocks. They're walking away from Jesus. He looks over. He sees that everyone out there is letting go of the stone that they had. He looks back at Jesus. He's looking straight at the woman. He's back writing in the ground, looking up at the woman. The parents grab James by the hand and start pulling him away. James looks back, sees someone spitting on the woman, but no one is throwing a rock. They walk out of the church, and James, as soon as he gets outside of the temple, lets go of his parents' hands, runs back. He has to see what the outcome of this story is. He has to see what's going on. And he gets back just in time to see the woman stand up and face Jesus, who just saved her life. He sees Jesus say something to the woman. He can't really make out what he's saying to her. And he places his hand on her shoulder, and he lets her go. As the woman's leaving, she has this look of determination and relief on her face. Jesus looks back and sees James staring at him, smiles, and leaves the temple. This story happened. This is in the Bible. And tonight, I am so excited to bring you one of the coolest messages of forgiveness, one of the coolest messages of relief that has ever been told. If you have your Bibles, We're going to turn to John chapter 8 tonight. If you didn't bring your Bibles this week, we would love for you to bring them with you each week. If you don't have one, we can get a Bible for you. We'd love to do that. Just find a leader, it'd be our gift to you to give you a Bible. And if you want, you can feel free to take notes as well. You're always welcome to do that. If you have a phone and you want to take notes on your phone, you have that cool Notes app. That's awesome too. I think that God is going to really teach us a lot tonight through His Word. So, this story I just told happened. And in John chapter 8, we look in the second half of the Bible, go Matthew, Mark, Luke, John 8. We're starting in verse 2. If you don't have your Bible, that's okay. Just look on the screen. It says, early in the morning, He came again to the temple. That's Jesus. All the people came to Him, sat down, and taught them, right? That's kind of what we talked about. The scribes and the Pharisees bring a woman who's been caught in the act of adultery, and placing her in their midst, they said to Him, Teacher, this woman has been caught in the act of adultery. Now stop for a second. Have you ever been caught red-handed doing something? Like, have you ever been caught just completely you know they caught you. You're like, oh yeah, guilty, right? Like, there was this time I was on a road trip with my family, and my mom is driving, and I'm probably 8 years old, and my sister sitting next to me is 6, and she's doing that really annoying thing where she's going poke, 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 and then she waits 10 extra seconds, and just when I think she's not going to do it anymore, poke. So, my mom, looking in the rear view mirror, says, kids, knock it off. And I go, I'm not a kid. So, right? So she's poke, poke, and I just turn and just, hit her. Hard. I was take that, sibling. And she's a 6-year-old girl. Why are you clapping that I hit a 6-year-old girl? What? So she starts, the angry crowd. She starts crying. Crying. And I didn't hit her that hard, but, so she was exaggerating a little. I'm like, dude, tough it out. I'm like, you're going to give me a trouble. Tough it out. And she's, of course, she knows my mom's looking, so she's just full on, you would have thought that she'd been stabbed or something. She's just wailing. My mom is in the rearview mirror, goes, Zachary? Only my mom gets to call me Zachary. I know you all try to do it later. Okay, Zachary? Thank you, sisters. She goes, Zachary? She goes, Zachary, listen to me. Why did you just hit your sister? And here's what I did, because I was super smooth like that. I go, I didn't. Yeah, except for she was looking in the mirror the whole time. She's like, I saw you do it. And so, because Mr. Smooth, remember, I go, see what? And she was like, I just told you. Right, so, I was caught red-handed. Look, before I was a pastor, I was a teacher. I still am a teacher part-time at the middle school, but I taught history for 6 years. I taught 8th grade history, and I loved it. I loved teaching 8th grade history, but you know what one of my least favorite parts of 8th grade history was? The tests. Because I would hand out the tests, and almost every single time I would hand out a test, I would catch a student cheating. Because middle schoolers, you're not good at it, right? You're not good cheaters. Here's what would happen. I'd hand out a test, and I'd be like, hey, you can use this page of notes on the test. You cannot use this page of notes on the test. And so what would they do? They would wait till they think I had my back turned. They'd be just staring, but they'd look you can tell a cheater a mile away. They're looking flip, and then move their paper over. It's bang, loud, and I'm like, hey kid, you cheated. He's like, no I didn't. I'm like, you learned. Smart. Okay, so I just saw you do it. There would be a test. They would be writing their notes on their arms, on their forehead, and then holding a mirror up to their forehead to see the answer. I'm like, I see you doing that. You dummy. So that's why you needed to cheat. So look, the whole point is they're writing answers, they're cheating, and it's so easy to catch. But with the second that you get caught red-handed doing something, your heart just goes, Right? You know that feeling when you're caught red-handed and your guilt and your shame just start overwhelming you? Now, imagine what you've been caught doing. This woman was caught cheating on her husband. That's not a good thing. So she's caught doing this. She's literally dragged into the church, thrown before Jesus, and here's what they say. It says, now, in the law, Moses commanded us to stone such women. So what do you say? This they said to test him, that they might have some charge to bring against him. So here's the whole thing. The Pharisees were testing Jesus. They didn't like Jesus. And here's why they didn't like him. Jesus was walking around and he was saying, I'm God. I am God. And he's doing these miracles to prove that he's God. And so people start following him. But Jesus is preaching a message of, look, it doesn't matter what you've done. God loves you. He's preaching this message. It doesn't matter what your past is like. God loves you. And the Pharisees were all about these rules. Thanks, guys. The Pharisees, hold on. So the Pharisees were all about these rules. They were all like about just following every letter of the law completely. And so when Jesus shows up, he flips it all around. Pharisees don't like that, so they drag this woman in, and they think they're going to catch Jesus. Because here's what they say. Hey, Jesus. In the Old Testament, that's the first part of the Bible, there's this book in there called Deuteronomy. And in Deuteronomy it says, if any woman cheats on her husband, or a husband cheats on his wife, they're going to be stoned to death. And that means, not like drugs, they're going to be stoned to death. They pick up rocks and they boom, and throw them until they die. That's brutal. Okay, so then they say, we caught this woman doing that. So, Jesus, you say that we should forgive. But, in the law, it says this. You're caught now. What are you going to do? So here's what Jesus does. It's super weird. It says in verse 6, Jesus bent down and wrote with his finger on the ground. Right? Like he didn't answer him. He didn't question him. He just goes, and he starts writing. And I can just imagine these super religious dudes just being like, what the heck? Jesus, what are you doing? He's just like, yeah, and the Bible doesn't say what he was doing. It's like this mind-blowing thing. It says, it doesn't say what he's writing on the ground. We don't know if he was drawing a smiley face, or if he was writing the Ten Commandments, or if he was trying to play the Pharisees in the game of tic-tac-toe to see who would win, and the woman would live if Jesus won, and they would die if the Pharisees won. That's a high-pressure game of tic-tac-toe. And I think, we don't know what Jesus wrote, but I think he does this for a few reasons. Because first, this pause that he does here, it allows the woman to really think about her sin. When you're caught sometimes, you get so defensive, so reactive, and you make excuses for it, right? The times that I've caught students cheating on tests, the excuses I've heard from these students, oh, well, I didn't study yesterday. Right, yeah, that's why you cheated, but that doesn't excuse what you did. Oh, right, well, I didn't sleep a lot yesterday. Right, yes, but you still cheated. It doesn't excuse what you did. You still kind of broke the rules here. And we make excuses all the time. And so, but when we stop and we really think about it, we realize, no. Excuses aside, I was wrong. So when Jesus is writing in the ground like this, excuses aside, the woman starts to realize, I'm wrong. Here's the other thing Jesus does. This is still in verse 6. It says that they continued to ask him. He stood up and said to them, let him who is without sin be the first one to throw the stone at her. And then he bends back down and he's right on the ground. So he just like drops the mic on these Pharisees and then just bends back down and starts right on the ground again. And the thing about this is these guys are standing there holding these stones, ready to throw them and kill this woman. But when Jesus is writing on the ground, it also allows them to think about their sin. And they start realizing that, yeah, maybe they didn't do the same sin that this woman did, but they're sinners. And they're broken. And they've messed up too. And Jesus says, all right, first one who has never sinned gets to throw the first stone. Because just because this woman appeared more externally guilty than all these other guys holding the stones here, it doesn't mean that she was the only one who was internally guilty in her heart, or in her thoughts, in her mind. So in verse 9, It says, but when they heard Jesus say, go ahead and throw the stone if you're without sin. They went away one by one, beginning with the older ones, and Jesus was left alone with the woman standing before him. Jesus stood up and said to her, woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you? She said, no one, Lord. And Jesus said, well, neither do I. Go, and from now on, leave your life of sin. So the crowd leaves because they realize they're all guilty of sin. But then, wait, what about the woman? Like, the thing is, the law said she was supposed to get punished for her sin. And the Bible makes it really clear what happens when we sin. I talked about it last week. Romans 6:23 says, for the wages of sin, what we earn when we sin is death. For the wages of sin is death. What we earn is death. So if Jesus lets this woman go, then what he's done is he's like an easygoing judge who just goes back on his word. Oh, yeah, well, I know I said one thing, but I'm not actually going to follow through with what I said. So you look at this, you go, wait, he's just going to let her go? But she's guilty. And the Bible says that when you sin, it demands a punishment. But here's the thing. Her sin was punishable by death. Just like all of our sin is punishable by death. The wages of sin is death. But here's her sin. It was punished by death, but it wasn't her death. Jesus took that punishment. Jesus said, when he says, I don't condemn you, it's because he had already been condemned in her place. He had already decided that he was going, as God, to die for the sins of the world. To die for you, to die for me, to die for that woman. I wonder if, when he was riding on the ground, if he was writing out this verse that's in Isaiah, it's in the Old Testament, and it prophesies, it tells the future about what Jesus is going to do. And it says this, he was crushed for our sin, and the punishment that brought us peace was upon him, and by his wounds we were healed. Jesus knew that he has her sin on his shoulders, and he's taking all of her burdens on himself. So when the woman calls Jesus Lord, I don't know if you caught that. Let's put that last verse on the screen. It says, woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you? She said, no one, Lord. I don't know if you guys know what the word Lord is, but the word Lord, like when they have like kings and queens and lords, like way back then, a Lord would be an owner of something. So when someone says that that's my Lord, they would mean that that's the owner of my life. Like my life is in their hands. And so when she says, no one, Lord, no one condemns me, she's saying, Jesus, I'm following you. I'm following you. And that's when Jesus says, I don't condemn you either. See, the thing is, we can pay for our sin ourselves, as I talked about last week. We can pay for our sin ourselves. The wages of sin is death. Or, Jesus says, but you can say I'm Lord, and let me pay this for you. Choose that. And that's what this woman does. She says, my life is in your hands. And that's why he says after this, I don't condemn you. And then he says, leave your life of sin. So this whole series that we're doing, last week if you were here, it was awesome. We had the band here, there was some cool stuff, and there was a cool video, and a ton of games, and some fish flying through the air and everything else. But you guys saw this like thing that kind of looks like a dinosaur egg. But it's actually a well. It's built from the modern or the ancient times. This is what a well would have looked like. And so our series is called It Is Well. And there's a song that goes, It Is Well With My Soul. And we sang it last week. And that whole phrase, I want you guys to understand what that phrase means. Because we kind of use this as like a pun, right? Like a play on words. Like when we say it is well, we mean it is good. It is good with my soul. Our soul is the spirit part of us that God has created unique in all of you. It's what gives you value and what gives you purpose and meaning. And a lot of times, actually all the time, when we sin, our soul kind of hurts. Because we feel that guilt, we feel that shame, and we start being separated from God because of our sin. But here's the thing. When we can say it's well with our soul, when we start following Jesus, Jesus makes our soul clean. Jesus says, I took that punishment. You're not condemned. You don't have to sit and dwell on your past anymore. It's over. But I love what Jesus says when she starts walking away. I'm picturing this moment when Jesus is kneeling on the ground still writing. Everyone else is left. And the woman, probably with tears in her eyes, just says, no one's here to condemn me. No one's here to kill me. And she starts walking away. And Jesus, I bet, kind of stops her. And he just says, would you leave your life of sin? Not because you're not forgiven if you sin, because God loves us no matter what. When we sin, he still loves us. He still forgives us. But when we sin, we're getting robbed of what God has intended for us. So I think that it is well with our soul when we leave our life of sin. When we actually say, God, I'm going to choose to follow you. Yeah, I might mess up sometimes. I might still blow it. But the thing is, like that woman last week who left that water jug at the well and never looked back, I'm going to follow Jesus with everything I have. That's leaving your life of sin. And I bet that Jesus is almost pleading with this woman, saying, would you just leave your life of sin? Just follow me. Leave your life of sin. Because what's happening is it's robbing you of what God really wants for your life. And the second thing is, it's well with your soul when you walk in freedom. When you guys learn what it truly means to walk in freedom from your sin. Some of you guys in this room, I know it, because I've been there, your leaders have been there. You feel like you can't escape from the wrong things that you're doing. You feel like you can't be forgiven for the wrong things you're doing. You feel so broken, so far away from God. And it might be a really, what you think is a big sin, or it might be a small sin, which is all sin, it's all mistakes, but you might feel like you have done something that has kept you from God, and it's chaining you up, and you feel broken and empty and lonely. But what God is saying is, no, it's well with your soul when you learn to walk in freedom. Because it is for freedom that Jesus has set you free. So we learn to throw those chains off of us and learn to not think that negative thing about ourselves, like God will never love me, God will never forgive me, I'm such a screw up, I'm so broken. That's why when that woman stands up, she can look Jesus in the eye and say, all right, Lord, I'm following you. I'm leaving that life of sin. There's this book that I love. I don't know if any of you have ever read this book. It's called The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And in this book, it's probably one of my favorite books in the world, easily in the top 5. There's this book. If you haven't read it, you should. It's amazing. In this book, it's really a story. It's the Jesus story. And there's these kids. It's a book written for children. And so there's these kids that they find like a wardrobe. And they go in it, and it like sucks them into this like magical land called Narnia, where like the animals talk and stuff. And there's like a lion. It's called, the lion's name is Aslan. And so this lion is representing God, right? And there's this other kid, his name's Edmund. He doesn't want to follow God. He wants to follow this like crazy witch lady. So he gets like distracted and he goes and follows the witch, and then he betrays God. And he realizes his mistake. And he crawls back to his brother and sisters and the lion, Aslan, who's there. And he goes on this walk with Aslan. And we don't hear their conversation. We don't see it in the story. So he goes on this walk with Aslan, and when he comes back from this walk, he has his chest kind of out, and he's walking like he knows he has purpose and value. Before this, he's kind of walking like this back in the camp, and he talks to God, and he's walking like this. And the witch comes back. And the witch says, Aslan, you have a traitor in your midst. And I love what this says next. It says, you have a traitor there, Aslan. And she's saying, I'm going to take this traitor and we're going to kill him. Edmund. So she says, you have a traitor here. And then this quote says, of course, everyone present knew that she meant Edmund. But Edmund had got past thinking about himself after all he'd been through. And after the talk he'd had that morning, he just went on looking at Aslan. And it didn't seem to matter what the witch said anymore. If we get to the point where we stop thinking what other people have said about us, when we stop thinking about what our friends say about us, when we stop thinking about what other people might think of us if we try to follow Jesus, if we leave our life of sin, well, what will my friends say if I change? Well, what will my friends do if I drop this sin? What will my friends say when I'm sinning and I still make mistakes? Will they call me a hypocrite? Will they call me a loser? What's going to happen? We stop thinking about that and we start looking just at Jesus. It all seems to fall away and we learn how to walk in freedom. And the last thing I want to tell you tonight, if you're sitting there and you're going, yeah, you know, that woman, she was messed up. She was messed up. Yeah, like, my sin is okay, but my sin's not that bad. I mean, I sin once in a while, but I've got it under control. I mean, I'm fine. See, what I'm asking tonight is, what's your soul like tonight? Because it's well with your soul when you learn not to throw rocks. When you learn not to pick up these rocks and throw them, and you learn to set them down. Because I think a lot of us are those people that are so quick to judge other people. And that's such a problem in middle school, high school, and for adults too. We are so quick to judge other people by how they look, what they do, what they talk about. Do you know I met up with a bunch of juniors and seniors that go to this youth group? 2 of them are back there right now, hanging out. And we have a group of juniors and seniors. And I remember Eric. If you don't know Eric, he's back there doing the lights. He's an awesome senior in high school. Get to know Eric if you don't. Jade's back there too. Jade's the man. He's a junior. He's awesome. And so here's the thing. And while I'm kind of finishing up, I'm going to invite the band back on the stage, and they're going to lead us in one more song together. But the last thing I want to tell you guys tonight, I think it's really important. Some of you guys tonight, you're probably in the place of that woman. You just feel broken. You feel like someone's just dragged you before a jury, and that they've condemned you to death, and that Jesus has stepped in and said, no, you matter, and you have value, and leave your life of sin. Some of you guys tonight are probably on the other end of that. You're so quick to judge. And when we talk to these juniors and seniors, I asked them, I said, honestly, what do people at the high school say about ABC Church? When you're walking around Tascadero High School, what do people say about the youth group? And the first 2 words out of everyone's mouth, everyone in the room, people say that students at ABC are hypocrites. Hypocrite is someone that says one thing and they turn around and do the other. They say they're hypocrites. They say like, oh, yeah, we don't party, but then they do and go and party. Oh, yeah, well, we don't smoke, and then they go and smoke. Oh, yeah, well, we don't cuss, but then we go and cuss. Oh, yeah, well, we're perfect Christians, and then we're not. That's their impression, is that ABC is just a bunch of hypocrites. And the second thing they think about ABC and the students that go here is that ABC is full of judgmental people that try to just stay in their own little clique, stay in their own little friend group. And if anyone different tries to come through, anyone broken tries to come through these doors, they pick up a rock and they're ready to hit them. They're ready. They're just ready. And for us tonight, I don't know. I want us to be a church that people, instead of saying, yeah, it's a bunch of hypocrites and judgmental people, I want people to say, you know what, I was really broken, but then I came to ABC Church. I was really broken, but I came to ABC Church and I was loved for who I was. I was really torn apart because of the stuff that was going on with my family, but then I came to ABC Church and I felt welcome, and I felt valued, and I felt like I mattered. I want people to walk through these doors to be able to look at us as leaders and go, thank you for pointing me to Jesus. I want people to look at you as their friends and say, thank you for pointing me to Jesus. Thank you for showing me who Jesus is. Thank you for showing me that he loves me despite my sin. Thank you for showing me that Jesus loves me despite my brokenness and my shame. If we were a youth group that every single time someone came through those doors, we had a smile on our face, we're welcoming them, and we're making them feel like they belong, no matter how long they haven't been here. No matter what sins they've done, no matter what mistakes they've made, that they can walk back in here and be loved. I want people at the high school to say, you know, maybe this God thing isn't for me. Maybe I don't believe in God, but at least I know that the people at ABC really care. At least I know that the students that are following Jesus really care about it. I want you guys at the middle school to hear that. I want you to be walking around and be able to tell your friends and look them in the eye and say, Jesus loves you and actually mean it. I want you to be able to look at your friends and say, I care about you and actually mean it. What would it look like if that really happened? I'm going to let the band lead us in one more song.